Welcome back to another episode on the J.A.T side. I'm your host, Jalen Austin Taylor, and today is Friday the 13th, June 13th, 2025, and I'm glad to be back for another episode today with you guys. Last episode we dropped was last week, and it was about I believe God versus I believe in God. So if you haven't already listened to that episode, feel free to go check that one out right now, or you can check it out after this episode is over with. Um, but as you can tell by the title, today's episode is going to be about Chuck versus Larry. And some of you may be reading that title and thinking, what does that even mean, or what is that about? So last night, me and my sister, we watched this movie called I Pronounce You Chuck and Larry. And this was an Adam Sandler movie, and I love Adam Sandler. He's one of my favorite uh, movie creators, producers. Uh, I love his movies. I've always found enjoyment in watching them for the last few years or so. Um, so this was an Adam Sandler movie. This movie was made in 2007, and this movie was about Adam Sandler and his friend Larry. Adam Sandler was Chuck. His friend Larry was essentially in need of somebody to transfer his basically like life, um his savings, or like his, like what you leave behind for your family after you die. He wanted to make sure his benefits were in the right person's hands so that his kids could be taken care of if he passed away. So a little bit more background: Chuck and Larry, they were firefighters in this movie, and uh Larry is the guy who was in need of somebody to transfer his benefits to because his wife passed away a few years back, and his wife obviously couldn't be the beneficiary because she was no longer living, and he needed somebody that he could trust, and he couldn't trust his maid that he had because he felt like she wasn't trustworthy. But Chuck, who was his best friend, he had enough faith in him to want to have his benefits in his name so that if he did pass away for some from some casualty in firefighting, that he would have somebody at least that he knew would take care of his kids and take care of his family. So basically, Chuck and Larry end up getting married and try to keep it on the low, but they're actually living in New York. And in New York, there was a rule that if you aren't actually, because obviously it was a same sex marriage, so if they find out that you have a same sex marriage and you're only using it and you're using it for illegal benefits, you could end up facing jail time and you were considered a felon. So they had to try to keep this as low profile as possible, but they had people investigating them because a lot of people had started using same sex marriage to just reap the illegal benefits, and they really weren't actually, homosexual. So that was the issue that they were facing. They didn't want to get caught because they knew they got caught, they would both be facing jail time. So Chuck and Larry end up keeping it on the low as best as they can, but they realize that eventually, they have to actually prove that they are actually gay and they're married for that reason, and not to, in Chuck's and Larry's case, to get his benefits transferred to Chuck so that his kids could be taken care of if he passed away. And eventually in the movie, they're really starting to figure out that Chuck and Larry are not married because they're gay, but they're married just because of another ulterior motive, which, like I said, is to get the benefits transferred to Chuck's name. So, what I really want to focus on, though, one thing that I noticed that was interesting about this movie, was the way that these Christians in the movie were treating the people like Chuck, the people like Larry, and all the other gay people in this movie. And I was thinking about it as I went to sleep last night, um, because we watched it right before he went to sleep. And I was thinking about how the Christians were treating these gay people. And there was one scene in the movie in particular that really stood out to me. So there was this party, and if you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There was this party, and uh, basically it was a party, and most of the people at the party, not every single person, but most of the people at the party were gay, right? So the lawyer of Chuck and Larry would happen to be at this party as well. Now she's not gay; she's actually, she's straight, but she still supports. Obviously, she defends gay people. So she was at the party, and Chuck and Larry, obviously, they were at the party. They were invited by the lawyer. So they have fun at the party, whatever. But as they exit the party, there's a mob of Christians that are heckling, yelling, screaming outside the party, saying things like, gay is not the way. There's even a minister out there with a megaphone, and he's saying basically these same things. And as the scene continues to go on, as they're standing outside we'll just call it a club, they're standing outside this club, and the minister ends up saying to Adam Sandler, which is Chuck, through the megaphone, he says the F word. And I'm not talking about the F-U-C, I'm not talking about that word. I'm not talking about F-U. I'm talking about the other F word, which is a derogatory term that is used towards gay people, and which it should not be used, but it is used, unfortunately. So I'm sure everybody knows what I'm talking about. And Adam Sandler, he ends up punching the guy. He asked him, he's like, "What'd you call me?" And the guy raised his megaphone up. The minister raised his megaphone up and said it again. He said the F word. Adam Sandler then proceeded to punch the guy in the face. And this ended up causing him to become famous because it went viral basically throughout the city. It was in the newspaper, front page. Everybody knew about it. So now, basically, what they were trying to keep on the low, now they were being exploded because of what just happened. And Adam Sandler, which was Chuck and Larry ended up becoming like basically public figures after this incident because of what Chuck did, which was punch the minister in the face after he repeated what he said. And there was another guy who was screaming, saying, "You all are an abomination." Obviously talking about all the gay people. So what I want to take from this is that I know I've been talking a lot lately about my faith. I've been talking a lot lately about God and what he means to me in my life. But I feel like as I watched this movie, it was just another, like, it just spoke to me last night as I was sleeping, and it just spoke to me. And I was like, dang, it really, this, like, art imitates life, because a lot of times Christians, just like me, people who say they're Christian, go to church, they worship God, you know, but they go out here and they condemn people. And that's not what we're called to do as Christians. Now, if you're not a Christian, you don't have to listen to the rest of this episode unless you want to. But I'm really talking to Christians from this point in the episode onward. So if you're not a Christian, you can feel free to click off the episode. It won't hurt me. You won't hurt my feelings, because I know exactly who I'm talking to here. And I'm talking directly to Christians themselves. So, and us as a community, the Christian belief community, anybody who is a Christian, who claims they're a Christian, this message from here on out is for you. Just a disclaimer. If you're not a Christian, you can listen, but you don't have to. So, we as Christians, right, we're called to do the exact opposite of what these people were doing, these hecklers. I'm going to call them hecklers, because even though they were Christian, there was even a minister out there. He was heckling these people, which was not right at all. And that's not how you're supposed to treat people, especially people who are not in the faith, who are not believers, because you're only going to push them further away. And Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, he did not come to condemn. And he came to actually save the world. He didn't come to condemn people. He didn't come to tell them how much wrong they were doing and how bad they were. He didn't come to do that. He came to save people. He came to save you and me. He came to save us. And we're not supposed to condemn other people because we know, just like them, we have sinned too, and we have sinned. Now, you may feel like, well, I'm past my sin. I've already got past my sin. But the reality of the matter is nobody's perfect. And everybody is one day, regardless of how much good you think you've done or how much good you think you are doing right now, one day everybody's going to be judged by God, regardless of how good you feel about yourself or what you feel about yourself. Everybody's going to have to come before the judgment of God. That's also written in the scriptures. And the Christians in this movie, they showed us what not to do. Like I said, they showed us exactly what not to do, especially when addressing people who are not believers and who are not in the faith. So at my church, New Life, shout out New Life, in Decatur, Georgia, off of Candler Road, great church, serves the community. I've talked about the church before on the podcast, but it's honestly a great church. Service is one of the, it's really, the church is based on service. It's not a money, it's not a fundraiser. This is a church who genuinely helps the community and betters the area. And it's a very rough area at this current moment, but they're doing everything they can to make it a better community. And at my church, we watched this series in my Sunday school group, high school ministry, middle school ministry. We watched a series about a month ago called Unashamed, and it was by this Christian rapper named Lecrae. Some of you may know who he is, some of you may not, but he does make some really cool, dope music. So feel free to check him out on your own time. But this series by Lecrae was called Unashamed, and we were watching one of the episodes of it, and we watched a bunch of them. It's a whole series. But in this one episode specifically, Lecrae gave us three key ways to talk to people about Jesus. The first way to talk to people about Jesus that Lecrae mentioned was to talk to them with humility. Talk to them with a humble spirit. Don't try to be bodacious or braggadocious about, you know, what you believe and how it's so much better than what they believe. That's not how you're going to get somebody to, or how you're going to convince somebody to believe what you believe. That's not the way. The second point that he gave us was to talk to them with grace, which is to listen. Listen to what they're saying with the intention to listen, not to the intention to respond. Because if somebody, let's just say me and you were having a conversation, and I'm trying to prove, let's just say, why pizza is the best food, and I say, pizza is the best because it just tastes so good and it's my favorite. And then you say, well, I think that chicken is the best food because I like the way that it tastes, and I like how you can dip it in various things and how you can have different combinations of chicken and flavors of chicken. And I'm just listening to you, but I'm not listening to listen to what you really are truly saying. I'm listening just to respond and prove why pizza is the best food. We're not going to ever reach an agreement because I'm only listening to prove my point, and you're listening. You may just be listening to prove your point as well. But we have to talk to people with grace and listen to them and listen to their experiences, listen to why they believe what they believe, and not judge them. And the third point Lecrae gave was to talk to people with confidence. Talk to them with confidence, not in yourself, not in what you believe, but talk to them in confidence, with confidence in God. And it's a difference between talking to somebody with confidence in what you believe in yourself and talking to them with confidence about God. Because when we talk to people in confidence about God, it changes the way that you speak, it changes the way that you talk, it changes the way that you interact with them. Because if you put your confidence and faith in God, you're not going to have a cocky spirit. You're not going to have a prideful spirit. You're going to be humble because God has given us a spirit of humility, self-control, love. These are all things that have been gifted to us by God. So talk to people with confidence about God, especially if they are not in the faith. That's so key. And the main point I want to say today, the main point, if you don't listen to anything else I've said, listen to this. No matter if someone is gay, if they're straight, if they're both, or anything in between, us as Christians, we're not to treat them as less than or dehumanize them. We're called to show love to all people because they too were created in the image of God just like us. And that's what Jesus wants us to do. And that's what he came on the earth to do, to promote love, to save people, anybody who chooses to believe in him. And 1 Peter 4:8, a portion of that verse says, love covers a multitude of sins. And that's the reason why it's better to love somebody than to judge them, because judging somebody is only going to make them feel bad about themselves. It's only going to make them want to continue to do what they're doing even more. But if you show love to them, you may not change their mind at that moment, but you at least make them feel like they are accepted and loved at that time. And eventually it may cause them to change their mind. But if you just sit there and condemn somebody, it's not going to help them to get where they need to be. So when we're talking to people, especially that are outside of the faith, we have to make sure we talk to them with confidence in God, talk to them with humility, and talk to them with grace. Because if we do those three things, I promise you, it'll be a lot better than judging them, making them feel bad, making them feel ashamed. We want to make people feel unashamed of their current, their past, or whatever they're feeling, because that's ultimately what Jesus, he takes away all shame. He carries the burden of sins. He carries the burden of our guilt. He carries the burden of everything, our past. And we have to show that love that Jesus gives to people, because sometimes I feel like there's a lot of Christians out here who um, they have the right heart, like they want to see people get saved, but they just have the wrong way of doing it. Like they may have a good heart, but they may not have necessarily the right way of saying it. And I've heard the saying, like, it's not how somebody says, like, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And I think it's both, like both are very key, but how you say something is so important, but also what you say is even more important. So if you, even if you're trying to judge, like let's say somebody's trying to judge you and they say it in like a very respectful way, it's still kind of like, it's contradicting because you're trying to judge me, but you're talking to me in a like respectful kind of tone. So it's like, it doesn't add up. But if you talk to somebody respectfully and you also don't judge them, then that's what you ultimately want. But I hope this helps somebody today. A little bit longer episode today for a little bit of a heavier topic. But if you guys want to check out the movie that I talked about today, it's on Netflix. It actually leaves Netflix in 17 days. It leaves Netflix on June 30th. The movie is called I Pronounce You, Chuck and Larry. So until next time, I'm your host, Jalen Austin Taylor. I hope you guys have a great rest of your evening and Friday, and I hope to see you next time. Till then, I'm out.